This is a virtual reality headset. Put it on and you're instantly transported into a 3D interactive digital environment. In contrast to traditional apps and games, virtual reality provides a rich multisensory experience, and this can be much more immersive and engaging. This makes it really promising for language learners because a lot of us find that richer language learning experiences are not just more fun, but also more effective than traditional study. But let's not waste our time based on a hunch. What does the science say? Well, a group of researchers in Taiwan have just published a study they conducted. They taught one group of students using only virtual reality experiences and a control group using traditional methods, and the results speak for themselves. The participants were 130 children aged 10 to 12 who were learning English as a second language at school. Although not absolute beginners, from the description it does sound like these students are still at the beginner level. The control group followed a fairly typical classroom teaching method. Students did drills and exercises on worksheets, and the teacher presented new content with explanations and examples. The practice included repeating after the teacher, reading aloud, translating sentences, and doing fill-in-the-blank tasks. Students also did some conversational practice with their peers. In the experimental group, the researchers integrated two different approaches into the immersive virtual reality experiences. One called Content and Language Integrated Learning, and one called Total Physical Response. Content and Language Integrated Learning is teaching another topic in the target language. So in this example, teaching science in English, so that the students learn science at the same time as they're naturally absorbing the English language that they're exposed to. Not only does this kill two birds with one stone, but it also allows students to acquire new language patterns and vocabulary more organically. Total physical response, on the other hand, is about integrating physical actions into the language learning process. For example, the teacher might tell the student to jump, and then the students would all jump. And then that would be much more effective at teaching them the word jump than just explaining it. The combination of immersive virtual reality with these two different methods creates a rich multisensory and interactive experience where students can learn by doing, which tends to be much more effective. To pull this off, the researchers used a virtual lab called Happy Stoneface. This is basically a game that allowed the students to carry out various geology experiments, such as scratching rocks, identifying calcium carbonate, and using rain to simulate erosion. The language was both in Chinese and English, which started out with just simple find the object tasks and then built up gradually to a full experiment. This effectively used VR to combine learning science with learning English, and also allowed the students to experience receiving instructions in English and translating that into physical actions. It's important to note that this was a very short study, just 3 40-minute sessions, with an English test at the beginning and the end. And while the results can't necessarily be extrapolated to long-term efficacy, it is impressive that they achieved meaningful differences in this amount of time. In the test at the beginning of the study, the two groups performed basically exactly the same. But at the end of the study, while the control group only scored 103.7 points on average, the experimental group performed significantly better, with 132.7 points on average. The researchers even did an additional statistical analysis to control for that small difference in pre-test scores, and showed that the difference between the two interventions is statistically significant even then. Looking at it another way, the virtual reality group gained 62 points, whereas the control group only gained 42 points. That's almost a 50% difference. And on top of that, the virtual reality students even gained valuable scientific knowledge at the same time. This is a really interesting study with some very impressive results. I think the takeaway here is not necessarily that virtual reality is some superior way to gain language, but rather that it can be an effective way to implement content and language integrated learning and total physical response, two methods that already have a proven track record in an actual reality classroom. The idea of learning a language as a side effect of engaging with something else in that language is an idea that I find really powerful, and that's why I created an app called Squeno to help you out with that. Let's say I'm learning French and I want to learn about erosion. So I'll just type in erosion. Here we go, we've got an article. But this French is completely incomprehensible to me, way above my level. So I'm just going to activate Squeno, and the language gets simplified down to my level. And if there's any words I still don't understand, I can just tap them. Montrer. And it is automatically translated using AI to make sure that it's correct in context. or I can just find one of over 1,000 free pre-made stories on Squeno that I find interesting. To get a week of Squeno Premium for free, check out the links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and a special thanks to the authors of the study as well. To stay up to date with the latest developments in language learning science, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon. And I'd be so grateful if you could like the video and leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. And if you liked this video, make sure you check out this one too.